Well, in the Cumbria Men's League this Saturday, it's a big day. It's a final, a grand final for the three different competitions that the Cumbria Men's League organise: the Shield, the Trophy, and the Cup. That's being played at Whitehaven's ground. I'm joined by Peter Gilmour, who's been the representative for the RFL as far as the Cumbria region's concerned. Peter, a big day, three finals. It should be a good time for local amateur followers, supporters, to go and watch three good games.
Yeah, John, I think it's a fantastic showcase for the sport of amateur rugby league in Cumbria. I think there's three cracking games in store. Obviously, like I said, there's Maryport versus Hensingham, there's Roos versus Kells, and then the big one is obviously Walsh Hornets versus Lauca. I think it's going to be a tremendous day at the recreation ground at Whitehaven. Very good value for money, and I hope there's going to be a big turnout to come along and get behind all the six teams that are participating.
Yeah, excellent. We start at 11 o'clock with the Shield. Now, that's Maryport A and Hensingham A. I noticed they played last weekend, I think, and Hensingham won by about 40 points to 22 or something like that. But this should be, it's a final, and that won't come into it really. It should be that should be a close-ish game.
I think, as you say, John, I think when it comes to finals, kind of the form book goes out of the window. I would imagine both teams will probably be a little different to the last time that they played. Maryport had one or two lads missing, as did Hensingham, so it'll depend on the lineup. Essentially, what you're looking at, though, is these two sort of young, talented teams. Both are showcasing a lot of youth players with a few experienced heads mixed in there. So it might be, on the experienced heads in the team to lead the guys around and see who can sort of cajole the young troops the best on the day and adapt to the occasion. But I think it's a fantastic notion. What's been sort of raised to myself, I think it's a very good point, is that by having the three separate competitions, it's given all teams something to play for rather than the season kind of petering out. It's provided that incentive. And at the end of the day, I think that's what players want is a reason to train and a reason to still turn up on a Saturday. It's that goal, it's that carrot dangling before them. And I think that the three finals offers the perfect example of that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we might as well discuss that now. I mean, there was a lot of apprehension. There seemed to be a lot of opposition when the new system was going to be brought in. How do you think it's gone generally in the first season of the new sort of setup?
I think, like anything else, John, there's always going to be teething problems. I think, probably the initial teething problems have probably come at the sort of Cumbria conference level, because obviously there's a bit of a disparity between the teams at the top and the teams at the bottom. But I think in general, I think it's been really good. I think if you look at sort of the teams across the board, Askham have been massively rejuvenated. Roos have came into the competition, the men's league, and been a real breath of fresh air as well. I think it's really sort of give teams a bit of a boost. And I think if you look, Cockermouth have gone really well this year compared to sort of last year, where they're sort of running on fumes a little bit. And obviously Walsh have continued to go from strength to strength as they always do. So I think in general, I think it's been really good introducing the new teams into the competition, sort of regionalising the whole structure rather than having the Barrow teams in the northwest competitions. And I think Cumbria as a whole has benefited from the new system. But like I say, it hasn't been without its teeth and problems. And I'm sure the RFL will be doing a review at the end of the season with regards to any sort of things that need to be improved and listening to the club's feedback accordingly.
And obviously a good idea to have a Premier Division and a First Division as far as the Cumbria Men's League's concerned. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, something that was yesterday, you see stories and you just go, wow. So I believe that Spatria are now the champions of the Cumbria Men's League First Division, which means it's the first silverware they've won since 1984. And you look at the guys at the club, Spatria are one of the finest clubs you could ever wish to come across. So many good people at that club. Absolutely. Your Mark Ridley's, your Kevin Clark's, your Richard Hollidays, Craig Hamilton's, and they've really. What I love about Spatria being, having this success is that they've worked so hard at not just the open age, but also at the grassroots. They've got an outstanding under-14s team. And I think what Spatria have done and what they've achieved this season is absolutely phenomenal. And I think, again, without the split, that wouldn't have been possible. I think what it's done that's great is in the Cumbria Men's League, Premier and First Division, teams are pretty much evenly matched every weekend. And that's what players want. Nobody wants to be playing in blowout scores. I think players want to be playing at a level where they at least turn up on a Saturday and think, we've got a chance of winning.
Yeah.
I think as long as that's the case, players come back. If you know you're going to get big scores on you, it really is hard in this modern era to keep lads motivated. But I think when you go away from games and you've been beaten, you think, oh man, if we hadn't blew those 2 tries, we would have won. That keeps hope eternal, doesn't it? And it keeps people coming back and ready for the return fixture and things like that, John.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to still back to Saturday, as it were. After we've had the Shield, we've got the trophy. Roos Pioneers, who you've just mentioned there, against Kells here. Would you expect that to be Kells starting favourites?
That's a very good question. Because again, I think it very much all depends on kind of what team Kells put out. I know recently they've had a lot of experienced lads roll up the sleeves again for them and put a jersey on. And I think it's a tremendous credit to the ethos of Kells as a club. Obviously, their first team have had a superb season in the National League. But you look at, when they're short, they've got a guy there who coaches the A team, Lee Rutherford. People seem to want to run through brick walls for Lee. You look recently, such as the Agnew brothers, Kevin and Dave, have been back playing. I think Carl Size put his boots on. Lee himself, he's still putting them on. And you know something? You can never write Kells off. Realistically, if I was to make a prediction, I would make Roos the slight favourites. But Kells have just got this. There's a special quality about the club, a never say die spirit. So I think that's. Again, it promises to be a really good competition between the two on the day.
Yeah, sounds like an even one, as you've just said there, Peter. So that was 11 o'clock, we've got Maryport Hensingham. At 1 o'clock, we've got Roos and Kells here. 3 o'clock, the climax, Wathbrow against Lauker. That's a nicely tuned game in prospect, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Again, because I look at it and, it's obviously Wathbrow have got so many talented young players in their A team. They've got some kids coming through there, likes of Brady Todd, Billy Joe Towers, Dean Pattinson, Caleb Crosby, absolutely outstanding young talents, and they've really had an excellent season. They've got that continuity where they all sort of, they're all coached from the Ian Rooney playbook, and it goes right through the club, and they just know the script perfectly, and they're a team, they don't give points away easily, and they play, a fantastic game plan, and they stick to it for 80 minutes, and they believe in themselves, and they believe in the coaches. And then on the flip side of that, you've got Lauker, and, Lauker have had a fantastic few seasons, really, really good team, capable of some absolutely fantastic rugby. And to me, the Lauker have got, in my opinion, I was honoured enough to sort of be the team manager of the Carlin All-Star team last year at the end of this for Stevie Scully's testimonial. And sometimes you don't realise how good of a player it is until you're in close contact with them. And for me, Emerson Allen at Lauker is that guy. Yes. When I dealt with him last year, John, as team manager, and seeing how he sort of, what a competitor he is and how he inspires others around him. I think any team with Emerson Allen in a final has got a chance of lifting that trophy.
Yeah. One thing I have, one or two people, well, quite a few people have actually, from the amateur rugby league scene, community game scene, disappointed that it's been taken to a professional ground instead of having maybe 3 finals on a different club involved in the men's league. How would you answer that? I know, to be fair to Whitehaven, of course, I think they've latched onto that fact. And they have offered ways in which those clubs involved can get money from certain sponsorship deals. So they have been aware of that. What would be your own view on that, Peter?
Obviously, I've been at the coalface in the past where you make those decisions, and no matter what decision you make, they're always going to be unpopular with some people. I mean, earlier in the season, Stuart Cook from the RFL did sort of set out criteria for hosting the finals, and it included things like having 4 changing rooms to accommodate all the teams. And when you look at it, there's very few clubs that have unfortunately got those 4 changing rooms. You're looking at Maryport do have, Loucott do have, Wathbrow do have, but then all of a sudden you're in that position whereby you're putting a team that's in a final on their own venue, which isn't always ideal. But I think on top of that, from our experience last year when we ran the very last final under the Carla banner, we took the game to Down Park. The crowd was phenomenal. The players loved it. The sponsors loved it. And I think just by having it at a professional ground, it just adds to that bit of prestige to the occasion. So, as somebody who's doesn't always sort of agree and say eye to eye with the decisions that are made. I think it's a fantastic choice. I think it'll just add to the showcase. I think what Whitehaven have done in terms of offering the clubs the chance to gain sponsorship revenues, things like that, is an absolutely fantastic idea. And I just hope that the players embrace it, and more so, I hope the supporters do. I think it would be absolutely fantastic to see, a late 3 to early 4-figure crowd in the stadium on Saturday and just enjoying a fantastic day of amateur rugby league.
Yeah, because of course everybody can pay in the morning. They can see all 3 games for the same amount of money, can't they?
Yeah, that's it's. I believe it's £5 admission for an adult, and to me, £5 for 3 games of rugby is absolutely outstanding value, John. I think, like I say, it's a must. It's a must for all those who are interested in rugby league in the area. The community game is absolutely the lifeblood. I think if you just look at Whitehaven's renaissance this season, that's pretty much been fueled by the local amateur game. They've picked up some absolute gems. Guys, even with the Seaton head on, Hayden Walkers went through to Whitehaven. Liam Williamson signed. Lewis Brown went back and had another crack, and those guys have really pulled up trees, as well as guys like Ben Pearce and Jackson Smith from the Hensingham youth ranks. They've been absolutely fantastic for Whitehaven. And I think it's a chance to see this, some outstanding players as we speak, but also some stars of the future. I think on Saturday you'll see a few names that come 4 or 5 years down the line will be mainstays of the Workington and the Whitehaven rugby league teams, John.
Now, you're a big follower of Seaton Rangers, of course, Peter. Anybody there that might step up?
I think, to be honest with you, John, we've got some really good young players bubbling under the surface at the moment. Obviously, a few of them are, just needing a few more years under the guidance of our coaches and things like that. But if you had to pick a next taxi off the rank, so to speak, I think anybody who watches amateur rugby league and who's seen young Jaden Talentire in action knows he's an absolutely outstanding player. He's played the last 2 seasons at England youth level, and he just he just has time on the ball, John, and it's how I think what's most impressive is it's his speed of thought, both defensively and with ball in hand. He's got it all mapped out. He's an 18-year-old lad who could easily, he's got the brain of a rugby coach. I can't speak highly enough of him, and I think it's inevitable that he's going to be the next player to sign professional from us at Seaton. And if and when he does, he'll go with our full blessing. He's an outstanding player, but also an outstanding young man. And to us, that's always been more important than the quality of the player, is the quality of the person.
Absolutely, Peter, absolutely. Finally, back to the Cumbria Men's League. Is there a top 4 playoff again at the end of the season?
Yes, there is, John. There is.
In both the Premier and the first, of course.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So there'll be 2 top 4 playoffs. So there's obviously still, after this weekend, obviously whoever lifts the trophy or the trophies will have, as I said, achieved something fantastic. But there's also still another prize for everybody to aim for at the end of this season as well.
We mentioned that Aspatriad won the first division. How's the Premier Division looking?
At the moment, it's tight at the top. Wathbrow are very much up there, and obviously so are Askham. So I think it's all to play for, because both teams, there's some real tough fixtures in there. Like say Cockermouth are capable of beating anybody on the day. They've got some real good young talent in their ranks as well. And then obviously, like say Kelsey fantastic team. But it looks like it's going to be either Woughborough or Askham. Askham, they've had a fantastic season. Tom Wilkinson returned from Barrow Raiders at the helm of coaching, and he's brought back guys like Tom Hopkins, who's a former Barland international. Connor Saunders, who played for Workington Town, has gone back there. And it's great to see Askham doing so well, as because they're a club who've had a difficult period for a really proud and famous Hampton Rugby League club. So it's good to see them back up there. But like I say, I think it's going to be one of those two guys that'll ultimately lift the title when all is said and done, John.
Brilliant. Peter, really enjoyed your conversation with you, and thanks very much for your input. And all we can say is to everybody out there who've a rugby league persuasion, get yourself down to the Ortus Rec on Saturday.
Absolutely. No matter who you support, Workington Town, Whitehaven, Wigan, St Helens, Leeds, like I say, at the end of the day, these are the events where we show the strength of Cumbria Rugby League. We reinforce the grassroots, we show people the quality we've got and what we're all about. We pull together as a community, John.
Peter, thanks very much.
No problem at all, John. Thanks very much for your time. Pleasure, mate.